As you learn about the narcissistic pattern, it's also wise to reflect on the much healthier alternatives. Now, below you're going to find a link to my new extensive course called Ready, Set, Connect. It addresses both the mindset and the skills involved in gratifying relationships, and I hope you'll find it to be quite therapeutic. One of the quickest and easiest ways to determine if an individual has a strong bent toward narcissism is to notice how they can be very unable or unwilling to receive input. In other words, narcissists have such a strong need to be correct. They have such a strong need to have the final word in any kind of dispute that they're very prone to binary thinking. They have to be right. They cannot be wrong. And if you're not on the same side as them, that means you're defective. It's very much an all or nothing approach toward relationship. Now, it's interesting to put this in the context of how we all develop in our earlier years, and then how some people do and some people don't progress beyond the early development stages. When you're a small child, being right or knowing what correctness is, knowing what the rules are, is a very natural part of learning how to engage well with the world. You have a right way to manage studies, for example. When you take a test, there's a correct answer, there's an incorrect answer. There are certain ways that you're supposed to manage yourself when you're with your friends or with your families. You know, you're not supposed to hit your sister, etc. Or there are certain ways that you're supposed to manage yourself in social settings, etc. And so little kids need to understand that there's a concreteness that they need to have a respect for. But then as we go deeper into personal development, into the adolescent years and in the early adult years, that's when we go beyond just hard black and white, right and wrong thinking, and we begin to pick up on abstractions. Sometimes what is right for me may not necessarily be right for you. What makes sense to me may not necessarily make sense to someone else. And so we make room for nuance, and we realize that there are many factors that go into the making of a person being what they are. Narcissists tend not to do that. You've heard me say before that they tend to be caught up in pre-adolescent thinking. They are so stuck in having to say, here's the right answer, this is the correct way, and if you don't do it, you're going to get in trouble, just like an 8-year-old would think. That's what they bring to the equation. Now, I wanted to see if we can put this on a practical application. How many of you, for example, have heard somebody say something like, well, I just don't believe in divorce? Well, you know, being a therapist, that's something I had to deal with quite a bit. Sometimes people were at a situation in a marriage where it was untenable, and like it or not, sometimes divorce would happen, and you learn how to flow with it and make the best of a situation. Narcissists would be more accurate to say, I find it to be uncomfortable. Okay, a lot of people find that to be uncomfortable. It's like, nope, black and white, this or that. Or the same thing, for example, in politics. There's a certain way you need to vote. There's a certain thing that's correct, and there's a certain thing that's incorrect, and there's no exceptions to the rule. Well, actually, there can be a lot of truth or insight or wisdom on any side of an argument in most cases. And we want to make sure that we respect the fact that other people don't think the same as us. Or it can be inside the way that you do your work. There's a certain way we have to do things around here, no exceptions. When in fact there can be times when you need to take a look at some of the unusual circumstances that would be there. Or it can be something as simple as, here's how we're going to handle family gatherings. You know, there's always that one person in the group that says, well, here's how it all has to be. And everybody else is thinking, well, who appointed you to be so in charge around here? I had one guy that came to my office, this was several years ago, about a couple of decades ago. And frankly, he gave me a really good statement. He was being real reflective on why he was having some difficulties in some of his relationships, and he focused on this issue of having to be right. And he said, I finally have realized I am so right that I'm wrong. And I sat there and thought about it. I'm so right that I'm wrong. And I thought, this guy is onto something. Narcissists, when they have a sense of being right, it's like their version of truth is the only one that matters. Yours is worthless. And when we hold on to this sense of being right, it leads to all sorts of wrong behaviors. For example, let's see if we can go through quite a number of the things that tend to follow when you are so right that you're wrong. People of that nature are very easily critical. They'll interrupt you quite frequently. They'll talk over you. They have a lack of curiosity about you because you see it's all about just pronouncing what's correct versus incorrect. That means they do a lot of telling. They will constantly feel like it's their job to correct you, any kind of misinformation that they think that you bring to the equation. These individuals give loads of unsolicited advice, but then, of course, they're very defensive if you have anything that you might want to advise them on, and they're quick to justify and rationalize. People who are so right in this narcissistic way are easily argumentative. They make heavy use of shame and blame and ridicule, invalidation and guilt trips, because again, it has to be one of us is right, one of us is wrong, and it's not me, it's going to be you. They will ask you questions perhaps, but not for the purpose of truly knowing you. They'll ask questions for the purpose of making you look or seem foolish. They lie easily because they don't want to give any kind of impression that they are a mistake maker. So they'll speak in half-truths, or they will omit certain unflattering thoughts about themselves. They must maintain a certain look or an image on the outside. That's where you know that narcissists get it wrong about being right. It leads to so many dysfunctional behaviors. Now, I want us to look a little further at that and see what's going on inside the mind of that narcissist when they are so insistent upon being right. Ultimately, what they're implying is you are little more than a nuisance to me. You are the cause of their emotional duress. It's like they've put you in charge of making them feel good, and you're not living up to your requirement as assigned to you by them. That person that must be right presumes that all problems can and should be solved, meaning just conform to what I tell you, which means that they leave little room for mystery and uncertainty. Mystery and uncertainty and nuance scares narcissists. They don't know how to go into that kind of space. In their sense of correctness, it overrides their sense of empathy. For example, those people who are having personal problems, or they've had broken relationships, or maybe they've had stray kids, or they've had issues at work that haven't played out very well. The narcissist who insists on being right, all they care about is what'd you do wrong. And so it leads to a very condescending and invalidating style toward you. Listening to them is little more than just collecting data, and it leaves you feeling less than human because you're just kind of a robot that's supposed to do whatever they have programmed inside you to do. Simply put, when a person is so right that they're wrong, that's an individual who's going to have a natural inclination toward ingredients like hate and contempt, and then they're going to have insufferable arrogance. That's what we're talking about when we talk about the narcissistic bent. So let's take a look at some different ways that we can examine this whole need to being correct. I like being correct. And so let's make sure that being correct is not a bad thing. But it doesn't have to get in the way of us also being loving or peaceful or kind or decency. You know that a person has a good handle on being right when they can maintain respect toward people who differ. You know you have a good handle on being right when you can maintain standards and boundaries without being mean about it. Likewise, that individual would be somebody that actively seeks out ways to find agreement, even in the midst of differences. It's like, I don't require you to have to agree with me on everything. We can be agreeable even as we don't always agree. That person who has a good handle on being correct is never so smart that they're unable to learn. They like to learn about new things, and new perspectives will stimulate them. These individuals are quite willing to admit when they're wrong, and they can acknowledge their flaws or their personal deficiencies. They understand that pervasive or chronic certainty is merely a cover for deep insecurity, whereas they also acknowledge that when you can admit uncertainty or weakness, that's when you actually can have a certain strength that you draw upon. That's something that's lost on the narcissist. Basically, when we talk about a person who knows how to be right, that's somebody that focuses on an individual's essence as opposed to their performances. And when I say essence, it comes from the Latin word that means your being, their own being and your being. And they realize is a very, very complex topic to know and understand someone's essence. Let's take whatever time we need to sift it out. So I go back to that phrase, I'm so right that I'm wrong. And I'm thinking, yeah, that explains the narcissist quite fully or literally. Here on Team Healthy, we like being right, as long as we can also say, and I want to know how to love you more wisely, even as I hold on to my correct thoughts. You can fuse that together, and it can make sense, right? I do hope that videos such as this can give you some good food for thought. By the way, there's a right way and there's a wrong way for you to lay on your blanket that your dad puts out there on the couch for you. And then there's the Gus way. Oh well, Gus didn't do it right, but he looks pretty comfortable there, doesn't he? Anyway, if you've not already hit the subscribe button, go ahead and do so, and we'll keep more videos coming toward you. I truly thank you for letting me be a part of your journey with you. If you find that you have a need for therapy, I'm so pleased that I'm sponsored by the people at BetterHelp.com. There's a link below that can take you to their team of licensed professional therapists. And if necessary, you can seek that out to get somebody that can help you sift out some of your strains and struggles with these kinds of issues that are there. And so, like I say, go through the link and there'll be a team there waiting for you. In addition, I have my therapeutic courses, Ready, Set, Connect, about knowing how to have good connection skills. So this is me about establishing those boundaries properly. Free to be about finding yourself despite the controllers. Each course has multiple videos, written material, questions that will guide you in a therapeutic direction. We also have my new podcast now, so you look that up if you're a podcaster, and also my books and other resources below. Plenty of there that hopefully can help you out. Well, it's nice to be right, but I don't want to be right pathologically. And when narcissists go into their pathological need to be correct, I'm hoping you can see it for what it is. And frankly, it's their way of saying, I haven't developed beyond the mind of an 8-year-old when it comes to these kind of things. And I'm hoping you can say, well, I want to go a little bit further than that. And in doing so, I'm hoping that you can pick up on the need to say, the people in front of me are more than just functions. They're people that have a backstory, their own feelings and interpretations, just as I do. Let's get to know each other in an honest way. That's how you find steadiness. That's how you find reliability in your relations. And I'm hoping that can also lead you to a place of personal peace.